Well, good morning. Those of you here in the room, those of you joining us online, welcome to Holy Week. This is a very important week in the rhythm of the church. Today's Palm Sunday. We're going to talk about that in 34 minutes and 42 seconds. We'll come back to it. So, I don't really like the beach. Yeah. Just, I'm not much of a seagulls, sand in my toes, flip-flop, suntan lotion kind of guy. That's just not my thing. Give me my cabin in the woods with my porch and my trout stream and my campfire, and I'm good. But my family likes to go to the beach. And so we go to the beach. When I was a kid, our family went to the beach. My mom is from North Carolina. So I remember, like any good mom, my mom would tell me something. I was super excited to see all those waves crashing in because I'm from Ohio. We don't have those here. You'd see those waves, but then my mom would tell me something. Every good mom tells their son, it's always boys, you got to warn them a little bit more. The waves are beautiful, but you got to watch out for something. You got to watch out for the undertow. The waves crash up, and the undertow pulls you back out. The waves are this beautiful, positive thing, but the undertow is this sneaky, silent thing. We like wave days, good days. What about the undertow days? Those other ones. Those are the days that I wrestle with. The throw in the towel days, the too heavy to handle days, the can't find God in the middle of all kind of this days. You've got those days too. So this morning we're wrapping up this 4-week series just called Wilderness Stories. And today we're going to be in 1 Kings chapter 17. And you can turn there, scroll there, flip there, or follow along on the screen. If you have to turn to your tables of contents to find 1 Kings, that's okay, because we don't go there too often. You might think I'm kind of crazy, but I love these last couple of weeks through the wilderness. I know they've been heavy. I know they've been a lot. So thanks for following me into these weeks together. Week 1 was all about Hagar, this young woman cast into the wilderness of rejection. Week 2, Joseph, a young man wandering through the wilderness of injustice. Last week, Hannah, a young mom who was peripheralized and marginalized, but still seen by God. Today, an overly emotional prophet who rode the wave of success only to find himself swept up in its undertow. And like the wave and the undertow, this story is really told in 2 movements. The first movement is the overwhelmingly positive wave of success. And then the second movement is, hold on, because here we go. Now, if you know your Old Testament, you know that the books of 1st and 2nd Kings tell the story of 40 kings who ruled God's people. And this morning we're going to take a look just at one of them, a guy named King Ahab. I need to tell you about King Ahab. He's got a little bit of an obedience problem. He marries a pagan princess, becomes queen. Her name's Jezebel. He builds altars to her god, Baal. Back in chapter 16, the writer summarizes Ahab like this. Chapter 16, verse 33 says, Ahab did more evil, did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel who were before him. Not a good dude. Now, the same year that Ahab ascends the throne, God sends a prophet to him, a guy named Elijah. And as his first prophetic assignment, Elijah tells the king that God is bringing a drought. I'm sure that was a wonderful first impression. Hey, king. Don't really know each other. We just met, but the Almighty God has sent me to tell you that because of your wickedness, it's not going to rain for a long time. See ya. In the ancient world, water was a very precious commodity. If your kingdom had access to water or was placed in a fertile delta like Egypt, you were an economic and political powerhouse. Ancient kingdoms fought over water the way that we fight over oil stuff. If however, you depended on rain for your crops, like Israel, you were at the mercy of the weather. The ancient pagan people were so focused and obsessed on this that they created a god of rain, a dude named Baal. Say Baal. Baal. Baal had to be pleased. And if Baal was not pleased, no rain. Ahab meets Elijah. Elijah talks to Ahab. From that meeting to our text this morning, it's been 3.5 years. 3.5 years, no rain. The rivers and streams are empty. Every well bone dry, not a drop anywhere. 3.5 years. 1 Kings 18, verse 17. Here's where this sets up. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is it you troubler of Israel?" And he answered, "I've not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you've abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now, therefore, send and gather all Israel to me at Mount Carmel," not caramel, you weirdos, "and 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So the story starts with a meeting between a disobedient king and a forthright prophet. And take a look how Ahab addresses Elijah here. What's he call him? He says, "Is this you troubler of Israel?" Sometimes truth speakers sound a lot like troublemakers when our hearts are hard. And the only way God deals with hardened hearts is to speak his truth in uncomfortable ways. And the only reason his truth is uncomfortable is because we really don't want to hear it. So Elijah is saying, "Okay, Ahab, you ready to dance? Here's how this is going to go down." Elijah then turns to the people and asks a very penetrating question in verse 21. Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you go limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." And the people did not answer him a word. Nobody said a word. Nobody made a move. This is the point in the story that scholars call the rising action. We know who all the players are. We got all the necessary information, the where, the when, all that sort of stuff. And if you're an engaging reader, you've got the sense that something is about to happen. And if you're like me, you kind of want to reach through the pages and go like, "Hey, how come nobody's saying anything?" Like, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, like, you know who this God is. How can you be such spiritual sissies? Elijah's question shines a light on the real, albeit uncomfortable heart of the issue. It wasn't that the people were against God. They liked God. But God doesn't want to just be liked. The problem is they're taking a little bit of God, a little bit of Baal, a little bit of Asherah sprinkled in. They're trying to mix it all up into some kind of a like, you can have it your way spiritual stew. And Elijah is going, "No, you can't have it both ways. God is not a product that you can take on your terms. He's not an offer that you get to haggle over." And the problem that they had is, like a lot of people today, they know about God, but they don't know God. Like, they heard the stories just like we have. They read their Bibles just like we do. They know what God's capable of, but the God of that world is not the God of their world. They've fallen into a very common spiritual problem. They've replaced formation by God with information about God. Knowing God, that makes the difference. Knowing about God, demons know about God. Knowing him personally, actually, experientially, that's what matters. The fact of God's omnipotence, his all-powerfulness didn't make one iota of difference in their lives. If God was a sham, they wouldn't live any differently. They are functional pagans. That's what's sad. I'm sorry to tighten the screws on this, but God is not content to be merely a theory for you. He wants to make an actual difference for you. So, hearing nothing but the loudest silence, Elijah goes, okay, fine, here's the deal. Verse 22, Elijah says to the people, even I only, am left as a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it to pieces, lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. I'll prepare the other bull, lay it on the wood, and put no fire to it. Here's what we'll do. You call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. And all the people answered, it is well spoken. By setting the sacrifices as 2 separate events, Elijah's making sure that there's not going to be any confusion. It's like you can be sure that they're both not going to burn up. Now, it's likely that the people agreed so readily because aside from being the god of rain, Baal was also the god of lightning. That's like his trademark move. Sounds good. Verse 25. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose for yourselves 1 bull, prepare it first, for you're many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire to it. And they took the bull that was given them, and they prepared it, and called upon the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. There was no voice, and no one answered. And they limped around the altar that they had made. The prophets begin their weird pagan ritual, chanting to their non-existent God. And Elijah defers to them to go first, probably another sign of his faith. I like imagining him like an 18-year-old kid standing up to a bully, just like, wait till my daddy gets down here. Verse 27, and at noon, Elijah mocked them, which I kind of love this. I'm sorry. I just really like it. He mocked them. Here's what he said. Cry aloud, for he's a god. Either he is musing, or he is relieving himself, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and he must be wakened. Like, I love the sarcasm. I love the humor. I love everything about this. The Hebrew here is actually a little more off color than the English preserves. It's probably more like maybe he had to go take a whiz. Like, he's being really, really like funny. It's just great. But beneath all the sarcasm, there's something else going on here that we've got to see. Please notice this. Elijah is using God's attributes that the people should have known to contrast God with Baal. Can he hear you? Versus God's attentiveness. Psalm 34, verse 17 says this, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears. Is he gone? Versus God's omnipresence, Psalm 139. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you're there. Is he asleep? Versus God's watchfulness, Psalm 121:4. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. If your God needs an alarm clock, you need a new God. But seriously, my point is he's not just being sarcastic, he's being theological, which is my favorite kind of sarcasm, theological sarcasm. Seminaries should teach this stuff. Point by point, Elijah reminds the people of what they should have known about God, but they have forgotten. Verse 28, and they cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out upon them. And as midday passed, they raved on until the time of the offering of the oblation, and there was no voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. Notice again the stark silence. There was no voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. 450 prophets. The glint of their ceremonial knives dulled with blood. Their once wild, ambitious eyes, dimmed with fatigue from self-laceration, come down the mountain like a defeated army. Take a look in verse 30. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." And all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be your name." And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 seahs of seed. And he put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, laid it on the wood. And he said, "Fill 4 jars with water and put it on the burnt offering and on the wood." I don't think he knows how campfires work. And he said, "Do it a second time." They did it a second time. "Do it a third time." They did it a third time. And the water ran around the altar and filled the trench also with water. And at the time of the offering of the oblation, Elijah the prophet came near and said, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, that I'm your servant, that I've done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that these people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and you have turned their hearts back." Elijah walks up the path to the altar, step by confident step, and then rather than invoking some twisted rite or some horrifying act of self-mutilation, attempting to earn the favor of a non-existent God, Elijah prays. And he says, "God, your glory." So what did God think of Elijah's prayer? Verse 38. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." I love that, don't you? If it wasn't enough that he just consumed the sacrifice, like those were the terms. But the fire consumed the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. And as awesome as that picture is, now we get to my favorite part. One more verse, slide all the way down to verse 41. Elijah said to Ahab, "Go up, eat, and drink. For there's the sound of the rushing of rain." Slide down to verse 45. "And in a little while the heavens grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain." What is that? Restoration in the form of rain. 3.5 years, not a drop. And then this passion formed a prayer and brings God's power. And slowly a cloud appears in the sky, and then another, and then another. And then before long, rain falls for the first time in 3.5 years. Now, I don't like the beach very much, but that is a wave of success. There's the wave, but then there's the undertow. King Ahab goes home. His wife is waiting for him. "How was work, honey?" Take a look in chapter 19, verse 1. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with a sword. We skipped that part, sorry. Go back and read it. That's real fun. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Translation, clock's ticking, prophet. Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. Here's the thing. Ahab and Jezebel, they don't just want Elijah dead. They could have done that. They don't just want Elijah dead. They want God discredited. The God of Israel just proved himself on Mount Carmel, and we can't have any of that. The rising fire of revolution catching around God's people. will diminish into a faint wisp of dissipating smoke if we can get this little prophet afraid, alone, and away. Can I tell you the crazy thing about our enemy? Like the real one, the actual enemy, the evil one? At the risk of sounding flippant, the devil is pretty smart, but he's just not that creative. He's been doing the same thing forever. He's just been around so long, he just knows what works. And I don't have to tell you, afraid, alone, and away. Those can be brutal. Afraid cuts off God's ability. Afraid says, what I am facing, God cannot handle, and so my fears are justified. That's what afraid sounds like. Alone cuts at God's goodness. It says, what I am facing, God is not interested in. He does not care. Away cuts at God's presence. It says, what I am facing, he is not involved. He's not here. Afraid, alone, away. If the enemy can get those into our souls. I think it might be helpful to get a quick sense of the geography here. All of chapter 18 happens at a place called Mount Carmel, right? And when the storm starts up, 1846 tells us that Elijah gathered his garment. He ran before Ahab, the entrance of Jezreel. So he ran about 20 miles or so. Then, chapter 19, verse 3, he comes to Beersheba. That's 90 miles. Then we come to chapter 19, verse 4, where it says, but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. Best guess, that's 20 more miles. So he's 130 miles from where he started. That wave of success that he had, that undertow has swept him 130 miles away. That's a long way. Day's journey into the wilderness, and he came and he sat under a broom tree. Here's what a broom tree looks like. They're rough, they're a little scraggly. They only grow in poor, dry soils. They're pretty tenacious. It takes a lot for a broom tree to give up. A broom tree only survives in the desert because it has deep roots. Broom trees know how to get the water that's down there. Broom trees know how to dig deep. And so here's what this broom tree of a man comes up with. Take a look in verse 4. He asked that he might die, saying, it's enough now, Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. And he lay down and slept under the broom tree. Now, this is neither the time nor the place to lightly glance at suicidal ideation. That's a topic that's worthy of more real estate than we can give this morning. But I think it's wise to pull off and say, it is misplaced zeal to try and sustain your spiritual life by mountaintop after mountaintop by mountaintop. Mount Carmel moments are nice, aren't they? But, because here's the question that's really lurking underneath these words here. How's God going to prove himself now? Because that's the uniting thread between these two chapters. That's what's really at stake. God proved himself on Mount Carmel. You still the God under the broom tree out here in the wilderness? I don't know about you, but I find that strangely comforting. God is not only God in the realm of success. God doesn't just move only on the good days. The God of our Mount Carmels is the same God that meets us under our broom trees. And as Elijah moves from internal monologue to divine dialogue, he finds that God is not deaf to his words. He's already there. But he answers Elijah in a really unexpected and beautiful way. Here's what Elijah wants under the broom tree. Elijah wants protection. God doesn't give him protection under the broom tree. Elijah needs some correction. He's being a little drama mama. God doesn't give him correction. Not yet. Elijah needs direction. He needs to know where he's going to go. God doesn't give him direction yet. Here's what happens. Behold, an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones, a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lied down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." He arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. What we want is protection, correction, and direction. What God often gives first is connection. Our greater need is to receive God's goodness. Or if you'll forgive me for sounding too glib, sometimes the godliest thing that you can do is have lunch and take a nap. He goes to Mount Horeb. Verse 9, there he came to a cave and lodged in it. Now here's a fascinating tidbit. The Hebrew there actually doesn't say a cave, it says the cave. And you're doing what I did. You go, the cave, what cave? I didn't know either, so I had to go look. Here's what I found out. That cave, while here it's called Mount Horeb, it's also got another name in the Old Testament, Mount Sinai, where 500 years earlier, God met with this dude named Moses. Perhaps you've heard of him. And he said this in Exodus 33. The Lord said to Moses, "Behold, there's a place by me where you shall stand on a rock. And while my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." That's the same spot where Elijah is in this moment. That little cleft in the rock may be more spiritually significant than he would have realized. Sinai is the place of God's divine self-disclosure, and so Elijah tucks himself back into the cave, doing physically what he must have felt spiritually. Then the God who Elijah has spent his days defending speaks. This is the first time that God has spoken to Elijah since he told him to go talk to Ahab. And when he comes with a question. Back in verse 9, he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And then the prophet pleads his case. He said, "I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with a sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." God goes, "Okay." And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." Now, I think would be a good time to tell you that Elijah's name literally means God is strong. And I think Elijah liked his name. He liked the God of Mount Carmel, loud, strong. He liked it when God flexed and filled up the empty spaces with fire. Elijah's God is a God with boxing gloves on. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. The Hebrew phrase means a thin silence. I have so many questions. What did it sound like? Was he scared? Nevertheless, Elijah knows that it's God. Verse 13, and when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Same question. God, we've been over this. I just said it. I'm jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, the people of Israel, forsaking your covenants, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with a sword. And I, even I only am left. They seek my life to take it away. The first time Elijah answers God's question, it's probably like out of self-justification. This one, it's a little bit of like an accusation in there. What am I doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? The people have become idolatrous. They've kicked you to the curb, and I'm the only one left. Also, not sure if you saw, I'm being chased by a psychotic queen, and you haven't done anything about it. I thought you were strong. I served you boldly, loudly, courageously. I thought you were the healer. I thought you were the fixer. I thought you were the justice bringer. I'm doing my best, and what are you going to do? You got enough fire left to take care of all this mess? The text doesn't exactly say all that, but I think that's the timbre of Elijah's words here. So how does God respond? Verse 15. The Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat." What? Hang on a minute. Hang on a second. God, wait. So, geopolitics? That's what you want me to start doing? Did you even hear me? Can I tell you what's maddening about all this? Is at first reading, God doesn't really seem to answer him. Just kings and prophets, and does that strike you as a little cold, a little unsympathetic, a little unfeeling? Here's what gets us off track in the wilderness. And then we'll talk about Palm Sunday. What gets us off track in the wilderness is holding God responsible for promises that he never made while ignoring the power of the ones that he has made. Say that again. What gets us off track in the wilderness is holding God responsible for promises that he has not made while ignoring the power of the ones that he has made. God never promised to get you out of the wilderness. God never promised a life free from suffering. God never promised your best life now. That whole business of God will never give you more than you can handle, that is garbage theology. Don't tell that to Elijah. Don't tell it to Hagar, Joseph, or Hannah. Here's the problem. Jesus is often packaged as someone who will make your life better. Someone who will give you what you already want. Like some sort of cosmic combination of a genie and holy Advil. Like he'll give me my wishes and then he'll take the pain away. That's not the gospel. Hear me out. God never promised to take you out of the wilderness, only that he would be with you in the wilderness. He never promised you a life free from suffering, only that he would lead you through the suffering and take the greatest suffering on his own. He has only ever promised his presence. That's the promise. In the wilderness, we ask all kinds of questions like, why is this happening? What am I supposed to get out of this? God doesn't always answer those questions. Instead, God gives us himself. His presence is the answer, which sort of begs the question, okay, how do I get God's presence? So glad you asked. I want to tell you why I'm a Christian, why I have chosen to follow Jesus. I turned 45 yesterday, and I've been really following Jesus, trying, probably only 30 of those years. Here's why I'm a Christian. It's not because I walked an aisle or prayed a prayer or because my parents are Christians or because I go to church or because I'm a pastor, although if I didn't, that would probably be a little awkward. I'm a Christian because Jesus is bold enough to name the wilderness. He is good enough to enter into the wilderness, and he is strong enough to transform the wilderness. This is Palm Sunday, the beginning of Holy Week. Palm Sunday is where everybody misunderstands Jesus. They think he's coming as a conquering king. And no, he is coming as a conquering king, just not in the way that you thought. The night before he dies on Holy Week, this week that we're entering into, Jesus huddles up with his closest friends, and he says these crazy things. He says things like this: one of you is going to deny me. One of you is going to betray me. The world is going to hate you. They're not going to believe you. Oh, yeah, and they're going to crucify me. So, yeah. To summarize, life is painful. What did you expect down here? But then Jesus has the audacity to say this in John 14, verse 1. He says, let not your heart be troubled. Why? Believe in God. You believe also in me. Slide down a couple verses to verse 6, and he says something even crazier. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. You want God's presence in your life? I'm it. Jesus doesn't present himself as one option among many. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Fast forward a few weeks in Matthew 28, he'll say this: so therefore go. Go. Make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. Behold, I'm with you. I'm with you always. I'm with you always, even until the end of the age. And then, at the end of all things, Jesus says this. This comes out of Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them. They will be his people. God himself will be with them as their God. He'll wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, behold, I am making all things new. And he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Now get this image. Tell me this isn't just beautiful. To the thirsty, I will give for the spring of the water of life without payment. We're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper in just a few moments. And so deacons, you guys can get where you got to go. But I need to ask you a couple questions. Maybe really just one, truthfully. The question is not like, what do you do in the wilderness? Or like, how did I get in the wilderness? Or how long am I going to stay in the wilderness? That's not the real question. The real question is, are you thirsty? Are you thirsty for something that this world cannot offer you? Have you tried to quench your thirst in 1,001 different places? None of them fulfill you, and you're still wondering why. And here's Jesus going, if you're thirsty, I will give you. I'll give it to you, and I'll give it to you without payment. You don't have to work at this. You don't have to try and behave. You don't have to try and perform for me. Give that up. Deacons, if you guys can get where you got to go. A little bit of instruction for us in this room. The Lord's Supper is a pretty important thing. It is a reminder that Jesus satisfies. So when you guys get where you got to go, you can start distributing the elements. If the North Can Chapel is your home church, you know this, that there's a double cup. There's bread on the bottom and there's juice on the top. And I have a really quick word for you. If you know Jesus, this is for you. This is a declaration that you are satisfied in him. And if you don't, and if you're still on the fence and you're going, I don't know if I'm with this God or no God, please let this pass you by. This is a little bit about satisfaction, but it's also a little bit of an appetizer because communion is a very small amount. It's not enough to satisfy you because we know he is coming back. And when he comes back, he will take us to be with him forever. And then Jesus will serve us himself. What a beautiful day that's going to be. So if you don't know him, let me ask you one question. Are you thirsty? And if you do know him, take these moments in silence to think about how good and how satisfying this Jesus is. Every promise he's ever made, he's kept. He's never lied. Take a few moments in silence, and then I'll come back up and lead us together.